Hi, David. How you doing?
I was just about to get lonely enough to consider going away.
That's a beautiful backdrop you've got there.
That is no backdrop. That's the real world you're looking at. Yeah. We're a little bit past peak fall now. The trees are kind of half bare, and the leaves on the ground are mostly brown. But still good and colorful. I think the red. Well, no, there's some reds over there still. About a week ago, we had it was peak fall about a week ago. We had yellow and orange and red, and on the ground everything was still very colorful rather than brown, and it was quite beautiful. I mean, it's still beautiful, but we're descending from the peak, and this is the fun part. I don't know if you caught that. I just had this land on my keyboard, so that's kind of fun.
Glorious.
So I was in all seriousness, I was wondering if I wasn't clear if the meeting was going to happen or not.
It's only just scheduled to start at this end, so
Oh, you're right. You're right. I opened it when I opened it at my 5 minute warning pop up, not at my meeting starting pop up. That's why I sat alone for 5 minutes.
very prompt to the meeting. Um, Let me just pop the link to the agenda notes. I'll just pop that in the chat. Let me just check. Oh yeah, Tara's going to join us in a sec. That's good. So obviously we've kind of come to the end of one piece of work, and now we need to start looking at some of the other activities that we should be picking up. So we've done the first phase of the reference architecture, and that's now available to people and seems to be getting some interest. So we need to take a look at what some of the next steps are, and how we can move this forwards. And also we need to take stock of what's going on in some of the other special interest groups, because we're starting to get a situation now where we've got overlapping work going on. So we need to be a bit more proactive in making sure that we're coordinating things and keeping them all focused against that overarching view of best practice. And so otherwise things have a tendency to diverge, and we lose that sort of joined up picture of what's going on. So I think one of the key pieces that we should be thinking about is one of the outstanding tasks that we've got right now, from the first phase of the best practices website, which was the work to put together some sort of assessment framework so that people can understand the maturity of their organization and get a feel for where they are currently versus where they could be if they were fully invested in a continuous delivery approach. Now, I think that overlaps with some work that's on the agenda for some of the other groups as well. So it would make sense to try and coordinate that and keep things joined up.
Sorry, I started talking and was on mute. I don't actually know. Does Zoom have good background noise canceling, or do you hear the landscapers a few doors away?
I'm not hearing anything over local fan noise. So,
Okay.
oh, hey, Tara.
Morning or something. Greetings. Mr. Bendery, it's been a minute.
How are you, Tara?
Good. I'm good. Little chaos and mayhem. Par for the course.
Nice to reconnect with you.
Indeed, indeed.
Yes,
I
and,
one of
and
one of
welcome back.
yes, thank you. I appreciate you moving the meeting. There's just Monday mornings are insane. For me, I just could not make the schedule work. I do want to say, David, that one of my engineers showed up to our one-on-one. He had a Google NYC t-shirt. I was like, oh, that's adorable.
Did you? So you reminisced a bit, huh?
Yeah, I mean, his wife works at Google, I think. But anyway, all right. What shall we talk about today?
So
You go ahead, Terry.
there. So Tara is co-chair of this SIG, but has been unable to attend for a little while because of
Been a bad participant.
rescheduling on her side. So we're very happy to have her back involved again. What you've missed out on has been the start of the reference architecture work.
Ah, okay.
So let me give you a brief catch up on that. I think we have mentioned it previously by email,
Great.
but the intent was to try and put together a reference example of what you might need to do in order to adopt continuous delivery in an organization. So what we've done to date is, if you like, the first phase of documenting that based off the TOGAF architecture model. So basically trying to look at different phases of an enterprise architecture and then present continuous delivery aligned to that model, so that we're talking to a less engineering focused audience and a more commercial business focused audience about the value and the return on achieving this, and what business change is associated, as well as what technical change.
Okay.
So
all right. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no problem. So what we've got now is, if we've now got a top level architecture section in the documentation, and if I navigate over here, there we go. So we're doing initially the kind of overview. So views and viewpoints, drivers and constraints, and what we've got as content here now is basically we're setting out all of the individual viewpoints that would be potential stakeholders in this as an investment, and then for each of those, we then dive into what is this viewpoint, what's this stakeholder responsible for, how do they see the world, and what are the implications and the value add from continuous delivery from that perspective. So the point of this piece of work really was to just say, if you're going to do this, it's bigger than just your development team. you're going to have to get stakeholder buy-in from all of these people, and they're going to want to understand what's in it for them. But also you're going to need to address issues that they're having, provide value from this methodology, and get them to buy into, cultural change and process change and everything else that goes along with that.
That's kind of cool. Sorry, I'm
So
trying to follow along on the site here.
yeah, so there's a long shopping list of different views and viewpoints. And then from a drivers and constraints perspective, these are the sort of overarching critical pieces. What do we have to do? What mustn't we do? And this is just expanding on some of the stuff that we've already discussed in the best practices piece that we put together before. But it's about explaining how to tie these things together from a business perspective, what the implications are early on, and what you're going to need to do at a process level. And then beyond that, you need to understand where you are before you can move much further down this process line. So this discusses some of the high level capabilities that you need to have in place in order to be able to implement a continuous delivery approach.
Are you using capabilities in this sense from the accelerate definition?
No, from a business capability perspective. So this is a fact, getting across the fact that this is a business change piece of work first, and then an engineering change piece of work second. So it's about trying to communicate the things that would be a fundamental roadblock to being successful with continuous delivery.
Right. Okay.
And then finally, how do you know you're actually ready to start on this journey? Just some key pieces about ensuring that commitment is there at executive level to do the business change, and then moving on to metrics and DORA and those sorts of things.
Okay.
So really, this is the high level piece of, if you want to go on this journey, here are the people, how you sell to them. Here's the
You got a
key
total
pieces
Max
you need to
Headroom
put in
moment
place.
just now. Sorry. That was kind of cool. Was that just me, David, or did you get that too?
No, I thought I was in the Matrix for a moment there.
Yeah.
Oh, we're getting stutter, are we?
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Actually, took me back. You're good now.
Okay, good. Yeah. So this, if you like, is the high level piece that introduces the vision for continuous delivery in an organization, and sets out who you need to pitch it to, who could potentially sabotage, and what you're going to need to do to address their concerns and get everybody on board.
And so next step is an actual implementation.
So if you look at the TOGAF model, let me see if I can find a TOGAF.
I've got a definition of it. Here, let's see. Describe a method, show the building blocks fit together, contain a set of tools, provide a common vocabulary, include a list of recommended standards, include a list of compliant products. Is that roughly the version that you're thinking of?
What I'm thinking about is this. Okay. So this is the sort of structure of the TOGAF model. And it basically is designed to say that when you engage on any large scale piece of transformational change, you know, there's some preliminary work that you need to do, and then you start with a vision, which is a structured document, and then you work your way around through these various pieces of the problem, delivering stuff as you go. But it's circular, so once you're in this, you're in it for the life of the product. Now, what we've done so far is basically the preliminary pieces and the architecture vision. So that's the high level introduction. What you would then generally do is 3 pieces of work that focus on what's the business change. So more detail on what needs to happen on the commercial side of things. What's the systems change that you need, and what's the technology architecture involved. Now, we don't need to stick completely to these, but I think that there is value in now doing a deeper dive into what do you have to think about from a business process viewpoint to really address some of those stakeholder concerns and add value to the business. And then what's the technology implication? What does that mean in terms of how you structure your IT systems? And then we're into the engineering piece and example pipelines and stuff like that.
This conversation is reminding me, the first year or so I was at Google, Melody hooked me up with this guy in sales who was talking to a fintech company, and they were on round 2 or 3 of trying to go in on DevOps, right? And this was like 2018, 2019, somewhere in there. And I remember they had an internal technical conference. So they flew me out to Scottsdale, and they're making all these presentations. They did a little retro, like what worked, didn't work. And there was so many classic anti-patterns that were coming into play. Starting with, we're going to hire a DevOps team off on the side that has no authority to work with stakeholders who have no accountability to that team. And lo and behold, it didn't actually work because engineers hate change and they didn't want to have to adapt. So now they're like recognizing, okay, that was a problem. And so they're rebooting this. And the thing that I'm remembering is that they also brought in some of the executives of the company, including the EVP of sales, who made the fascinating statement that, like, I don't care what y'all do as long as I get my features. Right. And I was like, boom, there's going to be a round 4 at this company. And so, I mean, so what you're describing is a really, I think, very clear corollary of that idea of, like, what are the business structures and understandings, expectations that need to be in place, particularly around this idea of transition. It's disruptive, right? It's going to impact, at least temporarily, you're going to have to go slower in order to go faster, right? That kind of, because you're going to have to make changes. And I've often thought about that scenario, and it was a very educational experience, where it's like that buy-in that you're talking about is I don't think people understand sort of the complexity and the breadth of what needs to happen collectively as a system.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we can all think of examples of this. I mean, David, you've probably been sitting in cabs, I imagine, where you're hearing sort of people kind of stumbling their way in good directions, or at least I'm assuming you've sat in cabs. Are we still doing cabs for cloud build?
No comment. Internally private. I'm actually not Cloud Build anymore. I'm Tecton now.
Oh, you're pure Tecton.
Pure Tecton.
Oh, sweet.
So, yeah, different
Okay.
worlds. I'm actually much more public about my work now than I ever was, frankly. I think what I would call out, just I'm going to step back a little bit from some of the details we're talking about. It almost feels like what we want is a one pager or a talking points doc to help people guide these conversations. Like, here's how you talk to a person in this role to help them understand the value proposition you're putting on the table.
And looking at what you have, Terry, I think we're heading in the right direction for that on that. What was that? Sorry.
Yeah, so that would be the business architecture piece is
The
pretty much
viewpoint.
exactly that. Yeah.
Right.
So,
And I was looking at it, I'm thinking like, this is great, but a lot of these are like, can we add the TLDR to them or some kind of like table of contenting so that, you look at this, page or multi-page of prose, how can we make that have like the 10-second grab and now we can dig in. So it's more like content architecture on this, but I think that's the direction that you're thinking of, David, that we can build, and some of them have it, right? So I think, breaking this out a little bit would be great. And then the other thing is that I'm thinking of is one of the things when I was still at Google, I was trying to do is in DevRel, one of my projects was creating a body of work, not me personally, like getting my engineers to do it, creating a body of work that were reference implementations showcasing different ideas. Right now, the showcasing was, for example, Kubernetes. Like, here's how you put microservices on Kubernetes, or here's how you run web applications using serverless, right? Or there's a couple of different. Or here's how you do ops, right? Here's how you use monitoring and log trace libraries and all that other stuff, right? And I sort of last week, I was getting a vendor demo from a not Google company. It was around security. Like, how do you do like code introspection and programmatically generate reports so that you can hand them over to auditors for like critical infrastructure things for compliance. And they pop up a demo, and lo and behold, it was one of these Google demo applications. I mean, they're open source, right? And I went and I had a look, and the one that they were using has got like, I don't know, 4,000 or 5,000 forks. And I feel like it's kind of turned into like an industry standard demo, if you will. And by the way, I'm not taking any credit for this at all. I just, when I saw it, I'm like, wait a minute, I know what that is. I ran the team that rebooted that. Right. And so I'm wondering if there's an opportunity. And one of the things that we were trying to do, David, there was a young lady that I was talking to whose name is completely escaping me right now. I don't know if she's still affiliated with the team, but we're like, can we take one of these things and can we tectonify it? Right. And, conversely, with the other, and I'm kind of like skipping ahead hugely on your TOGAF, Terry, but I feel like there's maybe an opportunity like migration planning, for example. Now we have to be a little careful about this one, because this would be like, if we wanted to capture it, it would be migration planning off of probably cloud build to a Tecton variant, which might get people a little bit twitchy. But what I'm saying is there may be some opportunities to bootstrap some things here with the projects similarly, right? And I think if we look around, we may find other opportunities where people have things that can be leveraged in such a way. And another obvious one that, again, unfortunately, we have to be kind of careful about how we do this is like, what if we have one that's a Jenkins example? Could we get, do we migrate that to, could we say, oh, here's old school Jenkins, but you want to like go cloud native microservices. Okay, here's how you would do it on Jenkins X. Here's how you might do it with Tecton. under the covers because for whatever reason, Jenkins X is not exposing the level of Tecton that you want access to, like that kind of stuff. I'm just, and I am skipping ahead, but I'm trying to think about how we can also pitch this to the partner teams for how to get some engagement from that perspective, right? So kind of close that loop and then, work through some of these sort of intervening discussions as part of that process.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, you're not really skipping ahead here because each of these circles can be treated independently as a piece of work. And so we can get people contributing at any point in here now, as long as we're keeping things somewhat to a consistent overall narrative. So yeah, there's an opportunity now to have separate working groups focusing on getting different pieces of this put together. And I think the overarching piece and the bit that we discussed at a CDF board level was that the majority of people inside CDF who are promoting this stuff are coming from a background where they already do this and they know why they're doing it, and they're just it's about refining the detail. But we've already got most of those people on board. So if we're going to communicate this to a wider audience, we now need to be thinking about how do we connect with the rest of the world who not only don't know what to do, but they don't know why they should be doing it either. And so the early focus of this was on, we really need to communicate the bit that's missing because it's implicit inside your Googles and your Amazons, because everybody already lives and breathes that, but they can't see it because it's like water for fish. It's all around you, but you forget it's there. So
the other part of
this,
that, oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say the other part of it that I think if there was a way to articulate it in some, and I don't know what it is the cost, like to be able to project or estimate for this piece. Here are the things that you can think about that you can, if there was even a formula or heuristic, it's like, depending on where you're at here, that translates into, some, I don't want to say a number, but like how you set expectations about how expensive it's going to be. That's going to be a very expensive transition. That's probably going to be a medium weight transition, that kind of stuff, like to put some form of framing around it as well. Because I think that's also one of like the most critical things that people run into, is that they completely misfire on what the cost of the change is. And if they have the wrong, if they think it's not going to be that big of a deal, because of course, how hard can it be? Then it's more likely to be abandoned because the expectation setting was broken. And like, how often do we see that? Right.
Yeah.
And putting that in business terms, I think is a really key piece of trying to land that message.
Yeah.
It might be helpful to, this goes with our content around assessing the current state of your CI/CD. It would be helpful to be able to project ranges of cost and value proposition on a piece by piece basis. What's the cost and value of adopting this practice? Because the reality is that people don't migrate to these things in one go, right? They go piecemeal, phase by phase. So there's the holistic conversation of convincing your world that we need to up-level our CI/CD space in general, and then there's the prioritization conversation of where we start, and that goes to a cost-benefit conversation around the different elements involved.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's important that we do one more round of business architecture, if you like, because it's about really clarifying the business value and not necessarily putting numbers on things, but giving people the approaches that they need to be able to calculate those numbers for themselves. So it's about saying, this is the class of opportunity that you unlock by making this process change. And so, if you're going from a strategic upfront planning model where it takes you 6 months to put something into production, to a model where you can be putting something into production every week, then how does that affect your ability to react to changes in the marketplace and respond to potential customer opportunities and things like that? So it's that stuff that we need to spell out in fairly simple terms, with not too much of an engineering focus, but much more on the responsiveness of the organization to demand. And this is where we sort of hit the challenge we have right now within the CDF, is that we've got loads and loads of engineering expertise and people who will happily argue the nuances of different forms of pipelines for hours on end. But we have very few CTOs and product managers and, marketing people and people who are focused on actually delivering business value. And that's really the viewpoint that we need to get across right now. So we're struggling to get people to contribute to this piece of work just simply because we haven't got the right audience involved to help move that forwards.
I see in the, okay.
I
So
apologize. I couldn't jump off here.
Oh, okay.
Have a great day.
Thanks for joining us.
So what's your, so I see we have next steps. So what are you thinking as far as progressing through this?
So the most important piece is to try and get a slightly different audience involved in collaborating for this phase of best practices.
So it's recruiting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And I think actually it's going to be very attractive to that audience, because it's it's a chance for people to get involved in something significant and add value from their perspective. So yeah, I'm confident that if we speak to the right people, we will get a bit more involvement in that space. And also I'm very happy that you're engaged again, because it's more your world in that product focused space. So it's something that you already understand and you know the value of, so it's easy for you to communicate in this way.
Okay, so to be clear, we're looking specifically for senior technical leadership, like executive technical leadership.
Well, it's a mix of really sort of senior commercial management. So, if you look at that views and viewpoints list, anyone who's not an engineer in that list, their viewpoint is significant for this phase of the buy-in, because these are the people who've got the war stories, who understand the pain of needing to deliver quickly and being unable to because they can't get the engineers to magically do stuff instantaneously.
Okay, so identify flexible. Session group members for various fields is defined in views and viewpoints. The C-level stuff may be trickier. But I bet I could, maybe we start with, for sea level, maybe we start with some CISOs. That might be an interesting thing to talk about, especially as security for anybody who's in a regulated industry. That's the hotness right now, especially in the US, around everybody's scrambling around the executive order for secure software supply chain.
And just to that brings us into another piece I wanted to just update you on, because obviously we've now got a bunch of other special interest groups within the CDF doing a whole bunch of new things. So on the supply chain side, there's another group that's fairly active that is also considering some of these issues and looking at there's a crossover to another gap that we've got, which is the assessment of capability. Remember originally we'd set up a page for assessment, but we never actually came up with an assessment methodology.
Right, and I saw that. It's like, we still need it.
Yeah. So we need to really make sure that we're hooked in with them and we're doing one piece of work to go into here rather than having two parallel groups doing the same thing in two different ways.
Okay.
And I had that conversation last week with them to point
which
out that
which SIG is that?
I'll have to look up and remember what they're called.
I know that the other folks you were talking to were there's the interoperability.
Yeah, so there's also, hang on, where are they? Supply chain maturity model.
I see working group, supply chain maturity, and SIG software supply chain. Naturally.
Yeah.
There's two.
Yeah.
You think is it the working group or the SIG, do you think?
Well, they seem to have diverged somewhat, so we'll need to keep an eye on both.
Okay. That's funny.
But that's ever the nature of open source groups.
It is so true.
People like to specialize and get their teeth into something, and then they don't talk to anybody else about what they're doing. So we need to take on that role of connecting with everyone and making sure we're realigning things back to the overarching big picture.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of really good work coming out of it as well. So it's looking really interesting.
Okay. I see a comment here about site metrics.
Yes. So we attempted to get some Google Analytics set up on the site. But unfortunately, because we're sitting underneath the CDF main site, they've got analytics set up at that level in a somewhat complex way, and Doxy expects to be sitting at a top level with just a analytics ID, which it expects to inject automatically into each of the synthesized pages. So the problem is that the solution that the Linux Foundation gave us was to hard code a bunch of scripting into all the pages, which we can't do without doing some fairly serious hackery within the Doxy synth setup. Now we're likely to hit that same problem elsewhere, because a lot of the other projects are also using Doxy. So we may have to actually do that at some point, but right now it's kind of a bit out of scope.
Is the CD Foundation site having to do that itself?
Well, what they're doing is seems to be something more specialized, and it's not my field, so I don't really understand what the subtleties are of what they're trying to achieve. I thought they were just going to give us an analytics ID that we could stick into Doxy, and it would just report on that. And they gave us what looked like an analytics ID, and I stuck it in there, but they're saying that there's no data coming out, and instead they sent me back a whole bunch of JavaScript that they wanted me to put in every page.
God. Yeah, this is not my area either. On purpose. I manage UI engineers now, though. That's seems like everywhere I go, I start managing people who do things I have no insights into. I told them, I was like, I mean, managing, like, I'm the VP, right? I have a UI team. I'm like, all right, just so you're clear, my understanding of like evolved UI is white text on a black background versus black text on a white background. Like, that's kind of my level. And they all laughed at me, as they should. Okay.
So that's really our sort of areas of focus right now, with the most significant one being getting people engaged again to actually start producing the next round of content.
I'm wondering if shoot, this is going to be hard. I wonder if, like, are you thinking like interview based rather than like getting a group together? I think getting a group together might be just a pain in the ass. I'm wondering if, like, we can identify a couple of people, do an interview style, maybe even like Slack interview, like just trying to like start that conversation.
Yeah, I'm open to any options at this stage. So I think, maybe that's what we really need to do is just have a bit of a brainstorming session to say, how do we do this next phase?
Right.
How do we engage with this audience? What's in it for them?
And I'm also thinking that, we start with, we identify a couple of folks, and then one of the questions would be, do you know anybody in this role? Right. And have them help, like, find the next person.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
I'm mindful.
Sorry, go
I'm
ahead.
mindful that we should be taking a continuous delivery approach to this. So it should be customer driven. I'm very aware that a lot of what we're doing right now is we're putting words in other people's mouths, and so we need to get better, especially in this area, to actually get the conversations from the people who are at the coalface in those areas and get their perspective.
Great. Okay. Okay. Who's your primary, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to capture notes. Who's your primary contact with the software supply chain crowd?
I've just been joining in their SIG meetings, so.
Oh, you've been in this, okay.
Yeah.
Continuous Delivery Foundation. It's not on that calendar. All right. As far as since you're already in there, as far as like identifying a collab opportunity, can we leave that with you? And then maybe I could take on And then I can take on maybe, so at MongoDB, my CISO is this mad Scots woman. She's a delight. And I've been actually helping her. We're actually collaborating to bring kind of the security development infrastructure conversation in conjunction. And to be perfectly frank, MongoDB has a longstanding infrastructure ecosystem. It was 10 years old, right? So there's definitely opportunities of improvement from securing the infrastructure that 10 years ago nobody cared about. Even maybe 3 years ago nobody cared about. Now we care, so we're trying to fix it. So she and I are co-presenting at the next board of directors meeting about this evolving partnership. So she's great, and I bet I could probably work with her to kind of like workshop some approaches on how we might construct these questions for interviews in a way that would make people inclined to participate easily. So yeah. I will report back on that.
And I would have thought that there's some incentive for Tracy and Dan to get re-engaged on this.
We're actually talking to them as a vendor, so I will use that as a bludgeon. Not officially, of course, but let me see if I can make some inroads there.
But it makes sense to, they're doing all this hard work, and it's important, and it should be codified as part of best practice. So there's plenty of incentive there to contribute.
Yep. Okay.
But I think probably the key gaps we have are from the product focus. So it's people who are using engineering to deliver product, because they're the ones that should have the best understanding, if they've been on this journey, of where the real value was for them. And there are plenty of war stories in that space where people can be very succinct and clear about the advantages of switching from one approach to another.
Right. Okay. All right. That makes sense. And actually, if I'm starting with the CISO, my friendly CISO, and starting to build that out, and you're talking to the supply chain folks, we've got a little potential serendipity there, because I think that's probably security related topics around this are probably going to be one of the best hooks from a business perspective, right? I think that might be one to kind of lean in on, and there can be some sort of self-referencing or self-supporting sort of momentum that we can build around that.
Yeah. And I think we also need to be doing some of the reverse communication, which is making sure that the rest of the CDF groups are understanding some of these demand signals for the things that the projects are doing.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I will be doing later this month is kind of connecting on the CD event side and trying to tie some of that back into best practices from a publication perspective. but having been to a few of those meetings recently, it is still very engineering focused.
Right.
And it's perhaps not giving as much thought to what's the business value of having this abstraction layer, and making the argument for the value of that from a business perspective. So again, by helping to bridge that gap, we're making that product stronger and tying it into the big picture again.
So that reminds me, how are we doing for time? All right, a few minutes. Okay. Okay, well, check my. Yeah, I have a hard stop in 9 minutes. The other thing that what you just said put me to mind was so you're familiar with the Open Telemetry project, I'm sure, right? And Honeycomb and those folks. And one of the things that started coming out in particular earlier this year, last year, God, I can't keep track anymore, was that the discussions around observability have really been driven from the ops perspective. But Honeycomb now has some signature customers that are actually using it for their CI pipelines or their CI/CD pipelines. And I'm going to be talking to them tomorrow to kind of spitball some ideas and see if there's an opportunity, because where our CI system, which I don't know whether or not it's a good idea to contribute it to the CD Foundation yet. I'm still evaluating that. It's old, and it solves a very particular purpose, which is supporting MongoDB. So I'm not sure how broad that particular use case really is. So it's, how to have CI, how to have good, build test strategy for a distributed, highly distributed database. But even if we don't contribute it, we're using it, and there's some best practices that I'm starting to bring into the system. And one of the things is like, all right, well, it's like many of the CI systems, it's log based, right? And it generates petabytes and petabytes of data, mostly never looked at again. It's kind of just there if you need it. And it's a very old style way of creating a debugging environment. So what if we took an observability based approach and it was based on events, and how that tracks and all that other stuff. So what I'm trying to say is that I think there's another kind of possibility. You're talking about CD events. They're kind of in the same realm here, and I think there's a narrative to be found. And then especially if you think about that as far as closing the kind of the utopian ideal of the DevOps loop, which is from an ops perspective, you have the ability to trace back systemically to where did these bits come from and what things could have impacted it to be causing the thing that I'm seeing now. And then also here is the data that's being generated in production that is pulled into, the developer's realm so that they can get insights as to what bugs, blah, 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 right? And I was like, this could be like a really interesting hook around that idea. And I bet, and I'll mention this too, when I talk to Charity and whoever else is going to be in that meeting tomorrow, I'll probably talk to Liz Fong Jones or something. Like there could be an opportunity there for a little sort of cross-foundation opportunity to kind of really like, what's a concrete example of what we're saying here? Yeah. Right. Like
and
the CD events is not an abstract thing. Here's how we can actually see it used in the wild.
Yeah. And I'm grinning here because I actually kicked off a bit of a debate in the CD events meeting yesterday when I asked them where the observability events were. So
should all just be events, right? Isn't that what it should be? Anyway, all right. I can only imagine. You're so good at kicking off debates. Okay.
But it's important. This stuff is timely. It's what the market needs. So we should be seeding these conversations and helping nudge people in directions that are going to unlock lots of value for people.
Just capturing some notes here. See events. Observability model. Okay. Fabulous. Just as a heads up, I'll just really quick. I attempted to so Get Localize is a cool little company that actually Google uses, among others, to do machine learning based developer doc translations. Tried to kick off an experiment proof of concept against the best practices site, and I finally got it to say yes, it's working, and then nothing happened. So I'm going to try and circle back around on that as well, just because I do believe localization is a good thing, and I will let you know how that goes. Other than that, it is lovely to see you again. It's been an age.
Likewise.
So thank you for rescheduling, and I now have no excuse but to get back into this, and I'm excited. And at some point, I would love to kind of nerd out with you a bit on Evergreen. I'd love a objective third party sort of view on it, because I've kind of been in the weeds of this thing for a couple months, and
well,
it's interesting.
Be good for us to have a social catch up anyway. So you know, when you've got some time spare, throw me an invite and let's have a chat.
Sounds awesome. Thank you, Terry.
All right, great to see you, and I'm glad we got some energy going again, and looking forward to doing this.
Awesome. All right, talk to you later.
All right, speak to you soon.